Aftershocks TV, and we got a great one for you folks today as we're talking old school Bay Area thrash metal with a name that many of you remember from their debut full-length The Sane Asylum back in 1988. They're here today to talk about their new release titled Wrath of the Gods. From Blind Illusion, we got guitarist vocalist Mark Biedermann, bassist Tom Gears, and guitarist Doug Piercy. You're joining me today. What's up, guys? Thanks for coming on. How you guys doing?
Hey,
fantastic.
Man. For having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, guys. Well, you know, just to start things off, I normally don't quote press releases, but there's a couple of lines in there that I think I have to mention because I think it's spot on in regards to this record. And the first one I'll quote is where it states that this is a group of guys who know what diehard thrash fans want to hear, and they know how to put it on their 2022 album, Wrath of the Gods. I think that couldn't be any more spot on because when you listen to this record, it's obvious that you guys know what thrash fans are really what they really do want to hear, and that's catchy as fuck riffs and hooks, which are all over this record, song after song. I mean, it never ends, and it's a bit of a different musical direction, obviously, that the band took on this album compared to previous releases, including the EP that came out about 4 or 5 years ago. So, guys, let's start things off. Talk about Wrath of Gods. I mean, which you know, I know you've put out obviously music since you Sane Asylum back in '88, there, Mark. But I saw that it says you consider this to be the real follow-up from that release 34 years ago. So why is that, and why don't you consider all the other music you put out really a true follow-up to that classic?
Well, that's a misunderstanding. What I'm saying is that this is the album that destroys the Sane Asylum.
Gotcha. Okay.
Everything else is a bridge that got us to this, you know? So, I mean, there was music that we played back in the 90s that was like Psychedelic Survivor and, you know, Land of the Freaks, and this stuff never hit the thrash zone, and it was fairly metal. It had a lot of jazz and rock and fusion in it. And that was largely due to the fact that I could not find anybody who wanted to play thrash that could, you know? And then around 2010, I guess it was, or a little earlier, a good friend of mine came up to me and he says, "Hey, man, you know, when was the last time that you heard the Sane Asylum?" I said, "Oh, about 10 years ago." He goes, "Oh," he was almost in tears. Got Phil, student of mine, and he says, "Mark, I have a new cassette I just bought. Come over to my house tomorrow. You can stay while I go to work, and you can listen to it. It's a masterpiece." I'm like, "Well, right on, man." He goes, "No, Mark, you don't understand. You left everybody behind. They're playing that death noise on you know, the radio stations, and he hears Blind Illusion on the satellite radio all the time." And I said, "Wow, are you sure? Really? Okay." So next day I went and I listened to Yngwie first, the trilogy, and I thought, "Oh, that was great shit, right?" And then I put on the Sane Asylum, and immediately I was like, "Holy shit, this is not just guitar flash. This is not just a good singer. This is like a whole songwriting package where, you know, each song of a Blind Illusion song, any normal band would make 5 songs out of it. You know, we go through all these changes. But nonetheless, I was nearly in tears myself too, and I immediately took off and walked to El Sobrani to Danny Harcourt's house, who was a bass player that I had decided he was going to be the next bass player for Blind Illusion because he was within walking distance, you know. And he had never been in it. He had not had any success other than being with Star Chaser and Aftermath for just short periods of time. And he was a more pocket kind of bass player, you know. So I went there and I said, "Hey, Danny, you know who the new bass player for Blind Illusion is?" And he says, "Who?" I said, "You." He says, "No, I'm not." I says, "Fuck you, man. You're the new bass player for Blind Illusion. I'm starting it back up. We're going to get a drummer, and that's it, you know." And so I played some of the Sane Asylum for him, and he was like, "What the heck? I can't play that." I said, "Well, we don't have to play that. I've got this other stuff." You know, I wrote a bunch of rock songs that he could play and that were very difficult for him. I mean, I spent hours and hours with him, and I brought him from here to here, you know. He became very proficient. And so he was with the band for quite some time with Robert Nystrom from Aftermath days, and that was the Demon Master period. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the Demon Master was the 3rd album because the Medicine Show Espionage in Hell was the 2nd album. And while it was never completed or released, it still stands on its own. There's all those songs, you know, they are recorded in a demo form. Nonetheless, after the Demon Master, I ran into Harold O. Harold O was like, hey man, you know, what's going on? Do you know, have you seen the book? The book. I go, well, what book? You know, Murder in the Front Row. I said, okay, Murder in the Front Row. I had just came from the hospital. I had my top 2 teeth pulled out because the infection was up to here. I went to the hospital. It says, you must pull the teeth now. I will sign a waiver saying if I die on the table because I have a fever, that it's okay. No fault of yours, but I'm going to die in about 20 minutes if you don't. So they set me in, they pulled the teeth, and they were like, oh my God, don't breathe, don't breathe. That was the most toxic thing they'd ever smelled. So anyways, I lived to tell this tale. And on my way back home, I was so happy to be alive. I decided to walk through Berkeley and just, you know, cherish life. And there was Harold. And he enlightened me to the fact that Blind Illusion was in the Murder in the Front Row book. And I was, oh, great. And he said, hey, man, I really want to jam. I'm the bass player for DRI. And later I thought, he must have meant he was the roadie for DRI, because I always thought of Harold as a photographer, you know? And he was always on the scene. But then I remembered, oh, wait, he had his band in Hayland and stuff like that. So anyways, make a short story long, the original Blind Illusion drummer, Brett Hearn, returned to the fold and played one last gig with Blind Illusion. And then he left the band because Danny left the band. And right then immediately I called Harold and said, hey man, you know, I'm not going behind anybody's back. The bass player left. So you want, I would never ask you to quit DRI. I mean, that's like having Disneyland in your backyard, you know? But would you like to play in Blind Illusion also? And he says, that's what I've been dreaming of. Just like that. I was like, whoa. It was like I asked him out on a date or something, you know? So he made me play everything that he wanted to hear, which was Smash the Crystal, Death Noise, Blood Shout, everything from the Sane Asylum, you know? And when we finished playing Smash the Crystal, he looked at me like, I can't believe I just played Smash the Crystal with Mark Biedermann. Wow, man, this guy's a trip, man. And, you know, I had no realization all those years that I was in the lost years playing all the hippie rock, you know. I had no clue that we were still going, you know, that the Sane Asylum had made such an impact. McBean was always telling me that, but I just thought he was trying to make me feel good, you know.
Sure.
So next thing that happens is Harold cannot go on tour. So, well, we're looking for a bass player, I guess, for on tour, but we decided, you know, we had been wanting Doug for a long time. Had been, you know, totally trying to get him in to come and play, you know, but he's very busy with his everything. And, you know, it was a very big move to, you know, he knows he cannot tame the Biedermann, but what he doesn't realize is he's the genius savage that can actually, you know, keep me in check, because I got somebody right there on my insanity level who was actually smarter than me, you know? So yeah, I look up to this guy, you know? And so when he showed up, all this big gear and all this things, I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. See, this is a real fucking guitar player. You know, I just plug in and play, you know, I said, Doug, tonight we're just going to play Race with the Wizard and something else. And I said, all I want you to do is play lead guitar. You don't have to play one chord and you'll never make a mistake. And always remember, if you don't play, you're not making a mistake. So he's like, wow, I never thought of that. That's pretty true. So he argued the point like, well, I can't play during your vocals. I said, oh, you must. You know, look at Cream, look at Eric Clapton. They're always playing guitars while the singing is going on. And so he's looking at me like he knows I'm crazy and he knows he can't, you know, really can't talk me out of it. He might be able to talk me down a little bit, but nonetheless, we started with the Race with the Wizard, and he was looking around and he just started doing, I showed him a little bit of something like, well, you know, you're going to want to just play in here, you know, and, you know, A harmonic minor with the E root. And so he just destroyed it, man. I mean, it was just like, hey, Uli Roth, can you come play some lead for me? You know? Why don't you just play some scales for me, you know? And he did. And then we played a gig like the next night, and he played 2 songs with us, and that was Harold's last gig. And then Tom came along because of Doug, and Sire was always a hired gun at, you know, for real the whole time. I mean, he was from day one. He was like, you know, you can't put my name on the records or anything like that. So, you know, so I never even called him by his name. It's like, I got to start right here. You know? So Sire was a great dude, man. Great drummer. He really helped us out along the way. And you know, it was a very interesting learning tool for me. I had to learn how to speak to him and how to understand what he was saying, because his insanity was not a disciplined insanity like mine. It was like, whoa, okay, well, interesting. So we ran into Andy Galen at the rehearsal space, and in my mind, I was thinking, damn, I want to ask him right now, you know, but I don't want to hurt the butler's feelings, and I don't want to, you know, go behind Sire's back, but I'll just wait, you know. I waited. So eventually the day came, and the way it really happened was I read on Facebook, oh, Ghost Next Door says, oh, we're sorry to announce that we've lost 2 of our members. It's so sad we're parting with them. And so I called him up and said, hey, man, you got Andy's number? And I called Andy. I said, hey, man, I just want you to know you got a place with us. You got a home in Blind Illusion. You're in the band, sight, sound, and no audition. We know what you can do. You can do anything. And he was like, what's going on? I said, oh. And he said, wait a second, I'm getting a call. I think this is how the story went. I'm getting a call. And he comes back and he goes, oh, that was my friend. He just said, yeah, he read what was on Facebook. And I'm, you know, I got to think about this. I was like, well, Andy, I'm telling you, you come with us. He goes, well, you know, if you had to ask me before I joined the Ghost Next Door, I would have came with you guys. I said, yeah, all the more reason to know that you have a place with us now. That the Ghost Next Door was just an inconvenient little, you know, space holder.
Mm-hmm.
So we courted him by going to all of his gigs, his butler's gigs, his gig with the Ghost Next Door, hooping and hollering, you know, and right there in backstage, I was like, Andy, man, you're gonna have to play a song on the album with us. We've got the drum spiral. We've got like, you know, we got like 3 or 4 drummers that are gonna play a song each. That was the plan because we did not have a solid drum. And he's like, yeah, I'd like to do that. And then another gig came. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I answered it and then some. Absolutely.
The final gig was he was doing the Kiss Destroyer gig, and right before he went on stage, I said, hey, Andy, will you do the whole Wrath of the Gods album with us? He says, yeah. And wow, the earth shook, man. Is in the corner, a whole set of drums fell to the ground and the cymbals smashing. He goes, wow, I guess the gods have spoke, you know. And then he went on and played, and the rest is history.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, let's get into the new record, Wrath of the Gods. Let's talk about a few of the singles that you got out so far from the record. The first single that came out earlier in the year, Straight as the Crowbar Flies, just monster riffs throughout that whole song. Some great leads in between. That main riff on that song just absolutely sticks in your head. It just doesn't go away. Definitely just one of those kind of songs that it really lets, I think, the listeners know that this is a record that's going to be much different than the Sane Asylum or any of the tracks you put out since. So I guess, guys, talk about that track, how it came together, as well as the video, which I saw was also the first official video the band's put out in, I think, over 4 decades.
I have done a whole lot of, you know, low quality videos, you know, some very interesting things, you know. But as far as anything with actual credits rolling and monikers and, you know, real shots, you know,
professionally
$2,000 cameras, lighting, producer,
and incredible acting.
Yeah, incredible acting.
This was not acting.
Professionals.
All they do is come out to me with a needle, and I go, oh, deathly afraid of needles.
Yeah, well, you were tied up, so it was all good.
With the Crowbar video, actually, we had our friend George Anderson come and film us playing, and it was literally the first time we ever played live with Andy on drums. And we were down at Soundwave Studios in Oakland here, and he just came in and set up, and we kind of rehearsed and played a set of music, and then we rehashed the actual song for the video like about 10 times or something like that, so they could get the shots of us to edit it all together. And then later on, me and Mark went up and filmed the stuff with the belly dancer and him dancing on the lotus petals and him floating with a silver cord attached to him and all that. And it was all written out. We wrote the ideas out on a storyboard, and it all came together. It was great.
George is really good about being, I guess you could, I mean, how would you say, it's professional, obviously, but he's very into being traditional about making sure the storyboard is correct and set up, so that, I mean, he approaches the video making really, how should I say, just it's one step after another, and he knocks them all the way through. And then when everything is in the can, he just edits it all up, and it's all kind of pretty easy to deal with at that point. It's pretty awesome. It's nice to have a real pro doing the visuals.
Mm-hmm.
It's a visual master. You know, I give him all these ideas that are all these far-fetched. Well, yeah, you know, the lyric says this legend now known as music born recital. I came dancing out the womb singing natural soprano. So
I know. And then he started writing it. So like he would write the storyboard, and you would just do all the talking. It was all perfect.
And so he made the realization of me being born, coming out, dancing out the womb, singing natural soprano. And I told him, and I want to be walking on the lotus petals like the Buddha when he was born. And he's like, oh, that's great. We can do that. I was like, how are you going to do that? And he did it, you know?
Oh yeah.
It was great when we show up, and the belly dancer that was in the video was the actress, and it was her studio we were doing the filming at. And she's like, which one of you is my son? That I gave birth to.
I'm here to birth you today.
She had a great sense of humor. She was funny.
Nice.
Protection, I witness my rebirth at every return inspection. As the goddess breathes life in every orifice and pore, I re-enter my body and I live once more. So leave the grit out your ears and the sweat out your eyes, and you throw the book at me straight as the crowbar flies. As the crowbar flies, straight as the crowbar flies, straight as the crowbar flies, straight as the crowbar flies.
Cool. Well, you guys obviously also just put out a second video and single for Protomolecule. Tones, you know, on that song, the riffs are toned down just a tad. It gets a bit more groovy, sort of a hard rock classic metal vibe to it. Kind of the same essence as the track just behind it on the record too, Spaced. So, I mean, as songwriters, I mean, how important is it really, especially on an album like this, where you are really, you know, full throttle thrash on most of the record? How important is it to not just to bang out those heavy riffs and those thrashy tracks, but also to kind of balance it out with a couple of more of the heavy hard rocking tracks like the two I just mentioned, and to still sort of remain a band that continues to experiment, obviously, with other styles of metal?
Well, realistically, it's all very metal. Okay, even the songs that are rock are still very metal. I mean, most rock songs, you know, don't do that. You know, it's very heavy, but it's also very much fusion-y, you know. It's more fusion than just rock. I would say it's a hard rock metal fusion thing. And then the other one, No Rest Till Budapest, well, that's just uncategorizable. It's, you know, a hard rock song very rarely does 7/4 and 5/4, you know, and all these, you know, classical changes with bass solos. And
that's due to all of us having a long background in progressive and avant-garde types of music and interests. I mean, King Crimson plays a role, Rush plays a role. You know, when in my formative years, I was listening to a lot of Alan Holdsworth and Jean-Luc Ponty, and you know, putting that to Black Sabbath kind of sounds, and the whole thing's a big mishmash. And after all these years, it comes really natural just to let everything kind of shine somewhat. everything we've learned along the way. And that's kind of what you're hearing. That's why the song Space sounds the way it does. And we have the Protomolecule type of riffing, which is, you know, influenced by all sorts of like, you know, like the rainbow kind of metal stuff and all sorts of, I mean, it's coming from all over the place. You know, a lot of the drum fills are Neil Peart influenced. The song design is kind of classic Bay Area metal in a lot of ways. However, it won't stop us from just like throwing some crazy idea right into something to make it, you know, very special and different too. So there's that. And it's we're always really eager to try things, and you know, some things work, some things stick, and some things don't. And it's just a lot of material to grab from. So we're kind of like having fun playing with all of it, and everything's going. I mean, it's like you can hear there's a lot of bands that just every song kind of does sound the same. I mean, and you know, the same kind of structure, same sort of tone. Everybody's playing on 10. The dynamics, you know, aren't there, whereas we enjoy using dynamics. It's really fun to just like turn everything down to 0 and it's like still play. It's kind of cool. And then you can obviously turn everything up to 10 and dynamically make everything kind of move and feel, and it's incredible. It's a lot of fun.
I say
never turns down to 0.
With everybody in this band being very good at their instrument, we can just come up with any ideas and bounce them off the band, and they can be turned into something great, you know, crash and burn. But it's like experimentation is definitely welcomed by everybody in this band for sure.
Yeah.
This is the first time that Blind Illusion has achieved equal standing amongst all members. Nobody's having to fight to get their song in because everything is great that they're bringing to the table. In the past, some great musician, but a joker of a songwriter comes along and says, I got this, song. And it's like, okay, drummer brings a song, and we played it, we recorded it, and it was okay, but it was that was back in the funk days, where it was Blind Illusion, the In League with the Sun and Shock of Birth, which was the best of the lost years, as I call it. That was like Led Zeppelin eats the Chili Peppers, but really good stuff.
Well, yeah, speaking of band members, I mean, obviously Blind Illusion is no stranger to featuring well-known Bay Area metal musicians in the lineup over the years. Obviously now with Tom, Doug, and Andy, obviously, I mean, everybody, is familiar with those guys, but also you've had obviously Dave White from Heathen, Metal Church guitarist John Marshall was in there, obviously Les Claypool and Larry Lalonde. But Primus, I mean, when you look back, at the previous members of the band and bands in the 80s, I mean, did it seem like Blind Illusion was sort of like the farm team, if you want to call it that, you know?
Well,
Considering
actually,
it was,
Blind Illusion has a farm team, and that's the players that are on deck learning the songs. But so it's more of a Blind Illusion is more of a musical institution where people they're great players to begin with, but they come and they're like, what are you doing? Oh, now I'm inspired to do this and write that. And so, like Brian Kehoe, he's an amazing guitar player. But when he left Blind Illusion, he also left behind some chords and progressions that went on top of what I did. And he had new songs that he had written off of the tonalities that I had, you know, brought to him. And so that, you know, interesting.
Same thing like with John Marshall. That song Metamorphosis of a Monster has got some incredible riffing in it. And I really enjoy playing that song because it turns out that some of the riffs I really enjoy playing were written by John Marshall, which is kind of fun. And it's like I kind of throw my little twist at it, but it's basically I try to pay homage to John because it's a great riff.
Yeah, John wrote the riff that goes, I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah, that's a good one. That part is particularly refreshing.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so like,
Marshall,
you gotta be respectful of all the good stuff that was brought to the band. And so there's that. So that's fun.
Absolutely. And, you know, and the thing is, after, you know, I know after the Sane Asylum obviously came out, I mean, unfortunately, obviously, timing probably wasn't the best at the time because obviously not too long after that, thrash metal was on its way out in the late 80s when grunge came on board and, you know, the more slow to mid-tempo approach of rock and metal was taking hold. I mean, so Mark, I mean, the fact that thrash metal was on its way out, you know, in the late 80s, the early 90s, and the younger generation of hard rock and metal fans, you know, were turning away from it more into, like I said, grunge and more groove metal type of stuff. I mean, at that time, did you look at that really with Blind Illusion as it was sort of, all right, maybe this is the writing on the wall that Blind Illusion might be done? Did you ever think that, you know, it was going to be done for good, like a lot of other stories, or, you know, were you always just going to keep this thing going eventually, no matter what?
When any new member that comes to you to play in Blind Illusion says, I don't want to play anything from the Sane Asylum, you send them on their way. But when the 10th one, by the time the 10th one comes through, you start writing songs with them and see what they can bring to the plate, you know? Mm-hmm. So the Lost Years actually produced some very high level quality music and some great recordings that I would like to release. You know, some of those things you can find on YouTube. Land of the Freaks, you know, amazing lineup. Mark Biedermann from the Sane Asylum, he engineered it. Mm-hmm. And we spent the money, you know, but the drummer, Albert Simmons on that project, he was a Grateful Dead fan, Allman Brothers. And he confided in me on the night that I asked him to not return to rehearsal after the gig. And I told his girlfriend, Catherine, she's out of the band. Because she was ruling his life. Albert will not play anything from the Sane Asylum. He will not play metal. So the final night, we're playing the other one from the Grateful Dead. I started playing the other one, and then I whipped right into the Sane Asylum, and he just flowed into it. And she ran out of the place. You know, I was laughing, but I said, "Hey, Albert, man, that was really cool. You played the Sane Asylum and the other one. The other one's your favorite song." He goes, "Mark, I got to tell you, I never really know what song we're playing. I just jam along with you. I follow what's going on, and I just love to jam." I was like, "Wow,
man, what a strange time."
So I moved to Europe.
I was living in Europe and listening to bands like, you know, everybody from Propane to Pantera to the Organization would come play at the Dynamo, and we'd go there. And, you know, I mean, that's when I saw, like, oh God, you know, the Nail Bomb after Max left the Sepultura thing. You know, it was a lot of interesting, unusual situations going on in Europe. Meanwhile, Mark was doing his thing with what he just described. That was wow, amazing. But it was really interesting to get over and see new horizons over there, and you know, musically too. It was a very interesting time, the 90s. You know.
Yeah, 90, 91. I got into this like instrumental progressive rock band, and it was like Rush, you know, Van Halen, Satriani kind of stuff.
Well,
and then of course
that's a demo.
Yeah,
that's great.
Right when grunge became the most popular thing in the world, and everybody just like, you guys play too many notes. Too many notes. We don't want to hear this shit. So.
And it's great. I mean, it's really it's killer, but you know, it
wasn't for the time.
Not for the time. Amazing. I can totally see how that hit.
And definitely there's a huge resurgence right now in
so yeah, it was
thrash
right
now.
Yeah.
Why it actually worked out perfectly, where we were able to make this album, and all the big bands of the area, the Bay Area at least, are off doing everything. It's kind of a great time for us to be doing this, and we love it. It's the music that comes from our heart.
Looking back, the 90s, everybody kind of went on hiatus. Not everybody, but a lot of the bands from, you know, the Bay Area bands that we know and, you know, all know and love kind of took moments, you know, long periods of time in between records and kind of started doing other stuff. And it wasn't until towards the end, like in 2000s, that bands kind of came back together. There was that big show in San Francisco for Chuck Billy, the benefit of the Clash of the Titans or whatever it was, and or Tales from the Pit, or I can't remember what they called it. I wasn't here. That was a big deal because it brought a lot of the bands together again. Yeah. So they said, "Hey, what's up? We haven't jammed for 10 years," you know, and that was like an interesting time. That's kind of like when a lot of the bands started playing again, you know, after their hiatus, and then they kept playing and touring, and then they discovered, whoa, we can, like, you know, now we have the Bay Area Strikes Back tour that just did Europe again, and it's pretty cool, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, like Doug, you said, you know, you moved out of the country. When you, I mean, did you come back because you saw maybe a sort of, you know, you were able to you know, people were getting interested again in the thrash, or what was it music related, or okay?
No, it was family stuff.
Okay.
It was time to come back. I needed to help my dad out with the houses. You know, he had some house. We have some family real estate in San Francisco, and he was getting, you know, up there. It's like in his 80s, and you know, I'm his first son, so I kind of that was important to, you know, come back for the family and kind of do that. I wasn't really doing anything in Europe. I was doing demos and kind of jamming with some guys, but it wasn't doing so much musically, and just building race cars and doing engineering stuff. And then I just we as a family moved back to San Francisco, and in 2006. So I've been back since 2006. And once you're back, then everybody says, "Oh wow, Doug Piercy's back. Let's call him and do this. You know, let's play with this band. Let's get Heathen." You know, Jesus. Yeah. There was all these like little gigs we had to go, reunion things, and it was fun. You know, we got to play all the old songs. And
two things. When I first saw Doug and Ambo Chorus, I said to myself, "Man, that guy is the total counterpart to my style." He and Thane kind of, you know, they destroyed everybody because they're two great players, but they both used effects, you know, and so Thane's was totally soup, whereas Doug's is like, you know, vinaigrette and wine. You know, it's not like a bunch of on it, you know, and not to take away from Thane. He's a very great player, but he sounds like 5 guitar players because he uses a lot of echo and delay. So interesting thing is I met Doug's father, you know, and he gave us this logo right here.
Oh, wow.
He designed this logo for us. Because we were playing the Keystone Berkeley.
Hi, Dad.
Doug's dad and calls me up and says, "I would like you to and your, you know, friends, or you and your band come over for dinner and a nice chat, you know, a meeting about this big gig at the Keystone Berkeley." I mean, they spent like $1,000 on a huge ad and everything. I mean, these guys they did it, you know, they were doing it as they went along. So I went out there with my girlfriend, and I remember Jerry Finelli's like, "She's just a baby." She was like 16 years old, you know, I was like 20. Yeah, "She's just a baby. What are you doing?" "Hey, man, you know, whatever, man, you know." But Doug's dad was like, "Now I know you guys, you know, are very similar in the fact that you don't just play chunk of metal. You guys are very musical, you know, and my son's band will be playing after you. And I just want to ensure that you guys are going to be friends with them so that you stay and hang out with the band and listen, so that your crowd doesn't just leave before they play. And in order to preserve and in order to commune properly and make this happen, I want to present you with this $500 logo. $500 logo. And he wasn't shitting, because if we wanted to put it in Bam Magazine, it would have cost $500. So
that was my dad's Better Call Saul moment.
Doug's dad is very, very tactful. I mean, that guy, big, tall lawyer dude, man, you know?
Yeah.
And, he's just a gas. And, you know, when Doug came back from Germany and we got together, I said, hey, man, you know, what's up with your dad? And he's like, well, you know, my dad? Said, yeah, man, blah, 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 blah. You know, and Doug was like, well, you know, Doug and I were drinking buddies back then as well as music buddies. So he didn't have a recollection of it. But we were there at the house, you know, we sat around the table. I'm pretty sure you were there, Doug. Maybe you weren't.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, I saw the beds that he created where Doug's dad built these domes like spaceships and had the beds in it. So you close it up, and that
like
way,
soccer balls.
Yeah, the freezing cold didn't get you, you know.
Freezing cold water beds.
I even have the book that Doug's dad wrote. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Dig this. I mean, I thought when Doug gave it to me, I thought he was trying to send me a message, like, you know, like something about the Hell's Angels, because I mean, it says the Death's Head Mine. You know, the Death's Head. That's the Hell's Angels logo. You know,
wow.
like, oh, Doug. You know, but you know, I mean, you don't talk club business if you're not in the club, so I just kept my mouth shut. Now here I am on national TV, and I support all my local Hell's Angels. Definitely.
Awesome. That's great, Mark. I didn't know you had the book right there.
I even asked my friend.
Have you read it?
As somebody, you know, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. It's set in a specific time. It's a time period piece, you know?
Yeah, it's actually it's multiple generations in Mexico.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. It's well thought through.
It would make a great Clint Eastwood movie, or with Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin.
It would make an excellent Western. No question about it. I mean, everything's there. Hot women, really cool engineering. It's all there. That's crazy.
Right away, there's like a Komodo dragon or something in there, or
I don't recall that, but
like a huge iguana or something. You know, one of those very, very deadly reptile. Come, you know, just relaxing and seen running across, and it's like, whoa! Immediately, dude, I got so spooked right then. I put the book down because I was like, I don't like snakes and reptiles, and it makes my eyes hurt. And the only books I ever read in my life were, to begin with, album cover liner notes, and Up and Down with the Rolling Stones and the Beatles books, and that was it. You know, I never read anything until I was jailed for a while. Then I read Little Big Man and all of the good shit, all the Harry Potter books.
Awesome.
Potter in jail.
Well, we got a lot of info on Doug's dad. That's
Doug's dad is amazing. I mean, look at Doug. I mean, look at him. He's a lord. You know, it's like when you ask why he came back, in my mind, I was like, well, because he's a lord. He has property. He has to tend to his businesses. You know?
Yeah, you gotta dig that gold.
Nice.
No, but that's why I came back, and it's good to be strong with your family.
Sure, absolutely, no doubt. Well, you know, I'm just going to bring something up you guys talked about before, Murder in the Front Row. And we've seen over the last few years, we've seen some great documentaries come out about the Bay Area thrash scene from the 80s. Obviously, that was the big one, but there was also another one that came out as well that was directed by a good buddy of mine, Bob Nalbandian, called Bay Area Godfathers. Doug, I know you were in that, I know. And I obviously focused less really on the scene in the mid 80s and really concentrated more on a lot of the bands and the scene that was, prior to that, in the late like 70s, early 80s, obviously before Metallica moved up here and, obviously blew up the whole, helped blew up the whole scene. Obviously, Doug, your band, Anvil Chorus, Broke His Helm, Stone Vengeance, Vicious Rumors,
Right.
much more of a power metal sort of scene like before thrash took over. And Blind Illusion, you guys were obviously in full force at the time too. And I guess my question is, do you think, it maybe, because it took obviously a long time for Blind Illusion to get that, that deal with Combat. Did it hurt maybe the band in the early days in terms of getting more early recognition from labels and the music press, especially in those early days of thrash, because you guys at Blind Illusion, you guys were always a bit different, obviously, than everyone else. I mean, you guys never really completely sort of capitulated to just the full-on thrash sound that was going on, during the heyday. Because like I said, the fact that it took 10 years to get signed, I would certainly think it had nothing obviously to do with the musicianship or your skills as musicians. I think it had a lot of the fact to do that maybe labels didn't know really how to market a band like Blind Illusion from back then, because it was so unique and such a different style than the rest of the thrash metal peers.
Well, here's the truth, sir.
Mm-hmm.
In 1979, we did these demos where we went into the studio and our manager says, hey, we're going to, we're paying for this. We were all 16 years old. We had Death Noise, Kamikaze, and all these songs. And we recorded them all live because, they tried to get me to do this scratch track and it just made no sense to me. And it still makes no sense today the way they wanted me to do it. They wanted me to, have the guitar tone real plinkety plink and clean so it doesn't bleed on anything. It's like, man, put that thing in another room. How's my drummer going to play metal if the guitar isn't in his ears? And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And you can't use the second bass drum. And what are you doing? What are you doing running the bass just direct? When I played the bass, all this click was going on because I played bass on one song. And they're trying to tell me I had to learn a new technique. And I said, hey, I learned my technique from Geezer Butler. Okay. You got to mic the amp. And so I left the studio, came back and jumped up, kicked the ceiling and said, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to record the whole set live my way. And then we'll do all the overdubs your way, 4 songs, no problem, or we're out of here. There's no point in wasting my time. They said, okay. So the result was Augie Bloom from Rounder Records got a hold of our demo from Lisa Trulin, who was Lisa Carr, KTIM, AM, all hard, no soft. And he was freaking on fire. Okay. Now you got to realize we had a song Rockers Unite and Def Leppard came out with Wasted. And it was very similar. And we're just shitting bricks because these kids are already out there. And well, we're getting this chance from Rounder Records. You know what he said? He says, man, you guys, oh, that song, Who Am I? Oh, it's golden. If you write 10 more songs like that and only this guy sing, I'll sign you to Rounder Records. And that's how Cliff learned this. We told him, no, I'm not going to do our Blind Illusion's first album will be Kamikaze and Death Noise, period. And whatever else is with it, and Who Am I? Yes, it's a great song. And, everybody comes to me and said, Oasis ripped it off. And this ripped off. I mean, just straight from Zeppelin to me, so it doesn't matter. Zeppelin and Rush. But basically, we refused to just bend the knee to the sound that Metallica brought. I mean, I was blown away because this was like Exodus meets Black Flag and the Dead Kennedys. Okay. I couldn't believe it. I mean, we were pushing the amps, the sound things. It was just so much energy going on, and that really wasn't a problem for me because we had songs that were fast like that, but not everything, and basically when Mike Miner joined, he was the guy who went because he grew up on Lars. I grew up on Sabbath. He grew up on Metallica. So he brought the thrash right immediately to Blind Illusion. So whereas Cry the Banshee would have been boom da 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 da. That's how Nystrom would have played it. That's how many people would have played it. But Mike Miner played it the way Lars would play it, or Tom Hunting, and that was going you know, a whole lot of beats going on. So, and then basically, Metallica got us signed, you know, because when here's an interesting story. I mean, I don't know how much time you got this. One day, Kirk calls me up and says, "Hey, Mark, I got to ask you for your advice, and whatever you say, I'm going with, but you cannot tell anybody." I said, "Okay, what?" Metallica asked me to join their band. I said, "Wow, that's amazing." I said, I was watching them and I was thinking, man, these guys are so much like Exodus, you know? And he says, "You really think they're like Exodus?" I said, "Well, not really, but yeah, you know, you're a perfect fit." And I said, "You know, you should do it. If do they have a record deal?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Man, go for it, you know. And if you don't, what's their number, you know?" He's like, "Oh man." And I told him, you know, "I'm going to tell you what Lenny Gourlay told me, my guitar mentor. One day you're going to have to leave your friends behind because you're so good, and not everybody is as good as you, and you're moving at a very fast rate. A real band is going to come along and ask you to join, and you have to leave. You can always come back and help them." So that's what I told Kirk. I said, "It does not apply to me. It applies to you." And he said, "Wow." And so he did. He came back. He helped us get the deal with Music for Nations. You know, he walked our demos right into them. And that was the day my brother comes up and says, "Hey, Mark, some guy from England is calling you on the phone." It's like 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. Again, he's, "Hello, London calling." And I'm like, "Whoa, London calling." I'm like, wow, this is weird. So, this is Mark Palmer from Music for Nations. Under flag. We think Metallica is the Sabbath of the 80s, and Blind Illusion may very well be the Zeppelin. And we would like to hear more from you. Oh, okay. So they have the Trilogy of Terror and Blood Shower. The Blood Shower Smash the Crystal demo is what made them call. The stuff with Dave White, amazing vocalist. You put him together with Doug, you got, you know, amazing.
Heathen.
You got Octane. You got Heathen. So I was so happy they did that because, you know, I thought Dave was going to kill me for firing him, you know. But the thing was, I didn't fire him. Everybody else did, you know. Yeah, it's just Gino came to me and said, "Man, we got to be more metal, man." You know, it's like, "Dave's got to go. You got to sing. You know, you can sing like James or something. You know, you sing a lot of stuff anyways." And you know, I'm like, "Dude, you know, I always wanted to be the singer ever since I was 5 years old. I have to do this." He's like, "Yeah." So he was my kung fu brother, you know, older than me, Japanese guy. So I had to listen to him, you know. And so thing was that Trilogy of Terror demo, man, everybody loved it. But you know what people said up when we took it on tour with Exodus, and I'm throwing them out to people the next day. I was like, "Wow, man, it sounds kind of like Motley Crue," or what was it? Was the other guy? What's the vocal? Was that it? Motley Crue, right?
Vince Neil.
Yeah. And I was like, "Oh man," when Gino said he's got to go, I was like, thank God, because you know, Dave's one of my best friends forever, and Vince Neil is a great singer for Motley Crue, you know. But I always likened Dave to being somewhat of a heavy metal Steve Perry. I just ain't working, you know. I'm the Greg Raleigh.
The way it is, isn't it?
Yeah, but see, the thing is when he got with Heathen, he had a wake-up call. I don't have to listen to Mark, but I do have to listen to what he said. You know, I don't have to listen to him because he's not here. But whatever I said, he had to listen to. I mean, I wanted it heavier.
He doesn't have to listen to Mark. He has to listen to me.
And well, you were saying exactly what I said. And see, basically, I wrote Blood Shower and Smash the Crystal after the Trilogy of Terror, and I said, "I'm going to sing Bloodbath, Death Trap, and you go walking down the madman's path, blah, blah, blah," you know, and I'll do the Blood Shower, the Poison Flower, and he did the thing, and he refused to sing Blood Shower. Flat out refused it. Thought that direction was nowhere for Blind Illusion. I thought, this is the obvious, heaviest we can get, you know? I mean, I wrote that on the tour with Exodus up in Canada, you know? Ricky's going, "Oh, man, don't show me. I want to hear it." He's trying to figure it out. She still never figured it out. But the thing is when Dave went with Heathen, that was gold, you know? So I was very happy because I knew he was great. He was always great. But we got that call right after the Blood Shower Smash the Crystal demo with me singing, you know? I went and took singing lessons from Molly Holm from Voicestra with Bobby McFerrin, a jazz vocalist teacher. And she just was on fire with the demo I played. She's like, "Wow, that's pretty amazing," you know? And what people like this. I said, oh yeah, people, you know, it got played on KUSF radio and people in Europe, you know, ever since the 80s, you know, and she just couldn't believe it. She said, you know, jazz has just got such a small crowd. I mean, you guys are bigger than anything I know already. And I was like, wow, that's kind of a trip, you know. And our metal is still very, you know, local. But the thing is I'm not a businessman. Tom Gears is a businessman. I'm not a businessman. I don't care anything about business. I would rather make 10 copies of the demo and give them to people for a joint each, as opposed to sending them to a record company. Sending to a record company is going to cost me a manila envelope, the stamp, the pain and suffering of having to go to the post office, look at like, what are you shipping? Drugs, you know, bombs, you know. So I never really did that. we sent out like 2 demos to like people, but sending it to a record company, I know where it goes. I read the Platinum Rainbow. It goes to the circular file, you know. I mean, back in those days, they wouldn't even bother to call you. They just, you know, this is dead. This is nothing. Don't even waste your time on a phone call. So that was my, you know, thing. I was basically, I was a dismissive avoidant. I just why even try, you know?
Well, guys, now that you got this excellent record coming out, I mean, which trans fans are gonna love. What's the plan in terms of promoting the record? I mean, I know you guys play around here a lot. I see you playing shows locally, you know, around the Bay Area, Northern California on a consistent basis over the years. And obviously with the music business, obviously being as fucked as it's ever been, you know, and you guys aren't spring chickens, obviously get in a van and tour for months. I mean, you know,
Well, yeah, we will.
Oh, you will? Okay.
If
Is
we
that the
are
plan?
offered a tour, we will go.
Okay.
All it has to do is be able to make us break even and pay our rent when we're gone. That's no problem. Oh yeah, are you kidding me? We live for the song. We live for the next riff. We live for the next performance. We live for the next record. That's all. And it's not about the money, but it is the money. You know, you have to break even at least.
There's a lot of plans in the works involving the release of the record and what's going to happen right afterwards and how it's tied all together. So there's a lot of things in the works right now. We just can't quite talk about them just yet. But it's looking pretty exciting. So we'll just have to see. And it'll be a little bit more than just breaking even, hopefully.
And the previous, 2017, 18, and 19, we consistently went over to Europe and played in Germany, Netherlands, and Belgium and started building that up. And then, of course, COVID came and put the brakes on everything, gave us the time to record this album. Now this is coming out October 7th. And we've been doing a ton of interviews. We've got a bunch of ads in the European magazines, Rock Hard, everywhere over there, Art Shock. And basically, with that, and we have one festival called Storm Crusher booked already, and we're building a tour around that. So we're definitely going to be over in Europe again, and we're trying to push a bunch of U.S. stuff as well. So hopefully that all pans out.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more to say about this in the coming next month. Or
the reality is, all you can do is what you can do: social media, word of mouth, playing gigs, and I mean, the days of putting posters up on the walls in Oakland and San Francisco, they're not over. Machine Head has a whole billboard in Oakland. Now, I'm not against going to Expressions College for the Digital Arts and saying, hey, can you give us a day or two on your digital billboard, man? I mean, they let us record the whole Demon Master album there for free. A student recorded it, engineered it, and that's why it sounds like hell. But
there's just a lot more than just like doing old school type postering, and even more than like school social media drops. Media drops here on all of our socials. There's, like I said, there's some discussions going on right now as we speak about how to break into all new higher levels with all this right now, and it's based on strength of the album, and we're all really looking forward and very eager to having it drop on October 7th.
And luckily we have a bunch of lifelong musicians who are all able to get out there and tour. So
the God's honest truth. The God's honest truth is all we have to do is get a couple of our rock star friends. We don't have to take them out to dinner, but we have to grease their pockets. If we gave Kirk Hammett $2,000, he will make a mention. I can guarantee that. We gave him $4,000. We gave him $4,000 to produce the Sane Asylum.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that.
Hey, I'm telling you what.
I would go so far as that the theory isn't incorrect, but it's about how and who and how to cultivate your relationships with various professionals and just work your way up. I mean, a lot of these people we're discussing that have been brought up have been very successful, and they're professional, millionaire oriented people, and we need to deal with them on the same kind of level. So I mean, it's okay to have the wild, insane band situation and the structure that presents itself. All this presents itself incredibly well on stage, but when it comes down to actual promotion and techniques used with all these pro booking agencies and so on, it can't really even be done by ourselves. So there's discussions on how we're going to be moving into new realms with all this soon, which is excellent and required.
Yeah. So, might I add, in the old days, everything I learned about the music business came directly from Kirk, because we were very close. Every time I had new songs, he wanted to be the one to take us into the studio and help produce it. And he produced Trilogy of Terror. He helped us do the Blood Shower demo. And the last one, the 4-song demo was the final one that got us signed. He was there for the production, and John Marshall engineered some. And, then he was on board for the Sane Asylum. We gave him $4,000. And eventually, Mention Bernstein, their lawyers, management said, "Oh, Mr. Blind Illusion, you cannot use our boy's name on your record unless if you give us $10,000. So the $4,000 you gave him was for the work, for the services he provided. That's how they got out of that one. So that's the music business. And the bottom line.
Luckily, those days are long ago, and we're proceeding forward with pretty much clean slate.
Truth of the matter is, we're all still great friends. We just don't see each other because they had no time. I mean, the reason why Kirk and I parted ways is I told him, I got word that management said to the band, they sat him down and they said, "You boys can no longer hang out with all your friends in other bands and partying and drinking and doing dope. Whatever you're doing, do it with each other. Nobody else. Or you're not going to get our push. You're going to get replaced, because Kirk and I, we're reckless abandon, It's like, where's Kirk? Oh, probably off in Sonoma with Biedermann, hanging out, doing things, We were having fun all the time.
Oh, fantastic. Well, the band is Blind Illusion. New album, Wrath of the Gods, out October 7th on Hammerheart Records. Guys, where can we send the viewers and listeners to keep up with the band and find out more about what's going on with Blind Illusion and just keep it up with the band in general? Where should they go social media-wise and everything?
I mean, currently we're, on Facebook and Instagram and blindillusion.com. That would be the easiest ways to keep updated.
And I'm on Facebook, Mark Biedermann, so they can drop me a private message, and it will come to me, and all I have to do is accept it and then accept a friend request and whatnot. And I'm very open to everybody in the whole world to contact me.
Very cool.
That was one of my biggest
And we
thrills.
show up in the middle of nowhere in Germany. As soon as we get out of the van, Mark. I'm just like, how the hell is that even possible? Like,
dude, I was lost on my bicycle when I was in Amsterdam for a month, after that one tour. And I drove into this area that looked like it was like a college. They had all these huts and like science buildings. And here comes this guy walking. And I rode up to him and I said, "Hey, man, I'm Mark Biedermann from this band Blind Illusion." He goes, I have the Sane Asylum. I said, "What?" "I have the Sane Asylum." "Yeah, I know you." I was like, wow. So I asked directions to how to get back to the Belmer. And he's like, "You don't want to go there." I said, "No, it's okay. I'm from Richmond." Belmer's tough, but Richmond's way tougher.
Awesome. All right. Once again, guys, Blind Illusion, right after the gods, October 7th. Mark, Doug, Tom, thank you guys so much for coming on the show, and good luck on with the tour and everything that's I guess coming up soon, and the album. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon.
I'm Mark Biedermann. We're Blind Illusion, and this was Aftershocks.
That's right.
When it's time to rock, it's time to tune in to Crash Course Radio.